Awaken Your Shadow. The truth sets some people free. It offends everyone else. By Seth, the Red Neo, Cherupak.
Chapter 4. The Shadow Work Journey. The soul's advances are not made by gradation, such as can be represented by motion in a straight line, but rather by ascension of state, such as can be represented by metamorphosis, from the egg to the worm, from the worm to the fly. The growths of genius are of a certain total character that does not advance the elect individual first over John, then Adam, then Richard, and give to each the pain of discovered inferiority, but by every throw of growth the man expands there where he works, passing at each pulsation classes, populations of men. With each divine impulse the mind rends the thin rinds of the visible and finite and comes out into eternity, and inspires and expires its air. Ralph Waldo Emerson, from The Oversoul. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good, and acceptable, and perfect will of God. Romans 12, 1-2. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance, he is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. Robert Jastrow, from God and the Astronomers. Part 1. The New Spiritual Paradigm.
The old stories about God, spirit, and self are crumbling under the weight of the modern world. The sacred myths that shaped our perceptions and institutions are losing their grip. This is a good thing. It's tearing away the veil that has long hidden the truth of what it means to be spiritual. The time has come for a new paradigm, one based not on theory but on lived reality. A return to reverence, a reintegration of what was never meant to be split, spirit and matter, sacred and seen. Albert Einstein said we can't solve our problems using the same thinking we used when we created them. This is why natural law shadow work starts with replacing two crippling beliefs. The belief that the physical and the spiritual exist in separate realms. Authentic spiritual growth begins with recovering a truth our ancestors lived and breathed. There is no line between the physical and the spiritual. They are different expressions of the same fundamental power. Modern spirituality has lost this sacred thread. We've created a neutered, sanitized cartoon version of spirituality, disembodied angels floating around on clouds, praising an equally disembodied God. We've traded the omnipresent, omniscient, divine intelligence for a cosmic caricature, a sky daddy in robes who keeps tally of our failures and moral shortcomings from somewhere up there. This comic book cosmology has spawned a generation of spiritual amputees, disconnected from authentic power and presence, blind participants in the rituals that were designed to raise our awareness of the divine nature of the universe and of ourselves. We cling to hollow practices that make us feel spiritual while neglecting the vessel through which spirit seeks to express itself, our sacred mind-body complex. The ancients understood this. To them, the world itself was spiritual. Every leaf, every flame, every drop of blood carried the pulse of the divine. They didn't need belief. They lived it. Their lives were short, fragile, and close to the edge. This proximity to death gave them clarity about what was truly sacred. Imagine our long-lost ancestor thousands of years ago, walking barefoot in a forest at dawn. The dew kisses his ankles. The scent of crushed sage and damp earth rises with each step. His hand brushes the tall grass as if it were an old friend. The wind swirls gently around him, carrying the laughter of unseen spirits, until it shifts, moaning like a warning across the valley. He lifts his head. A storm is coming. He does not curse the rain. He does not separate the thunder from the gods. He does not name lightning as a natural disaster. He hears and feels it, and he kneels, not in fear, but in reverence. For him, every gust of wind is a whisper from the unseen. Every fire that devours a forest is a cleansing breath of a deity who takes and gives in the same motion. The river is not water, it is a living will, a voice. And when it rises in flood, swallowing crops and homes alike, it is not chaos. It is consciousness radiating with power. The sun is not a flaming rock in the sky. It is the radiant face of a divine being who sees all and warms the bones of the living. The moon is not a rock reflecting light. It is a mirror to the spirit world. To this ancient human, the water that flows around him is an expression of the same power that gives rise to his emotions. His thoughts are not separate from the wind. His heartbeat is not separate from the fire. His flesh and blood are not separate from the dirt and the rocks beneath his feet, and the gods are not separate from the foods that grow from the earth and nourish his body. His whole world is not only alive, but conscious. He lives not in the world, but as an extension of the same power that gives rise to it. This is not primitive animism. It is a worldview grounded in reverence and resonance, a living model where experience, meaning, and matter are one continuum. Now close your eyes and breathe as if the air itself were sacred. Run your hand along something natural, bark, soil, your own skin, and feel not what it is, but what is speaking through it. Do this in remembrance of the worldview that once brought meaning and hope to those who lived every day in a struggle to survive. Do this knowing that the divine has not hidden from you. It has only waited to be touched. This is the sacred thread that modern humans have lost. We didn't just forget the sacred. We replaced it with spreadsheets, metrics, and measurable outcomes. We traded intrinsic meaning for extrinsic metrics. We elevated utility over essence. This is the death spiral of civilization, when we value things for what they do instead of for what they are. Reuniting science with spirit isn't just a shift in thinking, it's a collective rite of restoration. For centuries, we've split atoms and stories, facts and faith, until reality itself became fractured. The new spiritual paradigm is not a new belief, it's the mending of the wound, the remembering that truth doesn't wear a lab coat or robes, it wears both. It wears you. The physical world isn't separate from the spiritual, it's a denser manifestation of the same reality. Just as ice is a slowed vibration of water, matter is condensed energy and information. And this is the heart of the matter. Information only arises from conscious activity, the combination of awareness and will. This is the most startling revelation of modern physics. It's what the double-slit experiment confirmed when it found that until matter is observed, it exists only as potential, as waveforms of probability. It takes intentional observation to collapse that probability wave into reality. This confirms that the ancients all knew that focused attention, willful awareness, is the very act of creation. John Wheeler, physicist and colleague of Einstein, called it from bit, meaning everything, it, arises from information, bit, and information is not material, it is mental. Max Planck, father of quantum theory, said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." By consciousness, I don't mean the buzzword used by the New Age enthusiast to vaguely describe something they can't or won't understand. I'm talking about a universal, infinite, non-material, living mind, the combination of awareness, the ability to observe, and will, the ability to choose where to focus that awareness. The ancients already knew this. The Gospel of John declares, "In the beginning was the Word, Logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Logos is not just word, it is living intelligence, the structuring principle behind all reality. The Taoists called it Tao. The Hermeticists called it the All. And their first principle said it outright, "The All is mind, the universe is mental." This is not metaphor. The universe itself is thought expressed through willful observation, not thought as opinion or chatter, but thought as organizing power. Information, structure, pattern, meaning. New subheader, From Mindless Machine to Divine Instrument. Modern physics and ancient wisdom now converge on the conclusion that consciousness is the fundamental reality. While our ancestors etched this truth into sacred symbols, we fumble through skepticism, trying to rediscover what was once lived and known. Max Planck called this underlying consciousness the matrix of all matter. He described it as pure information expressing itself through increasingly dense layers of manifestation. The now infamous double-slit experiment proved this when it showed us that physical properties remain undefined until observed. Particles of matter exist only as waves of probability until consciousness interacts with them through observation. This is what happens when you understand that physical reality emerges from information, and that information emerges only from mind. The ancient Hermeticists spoke of this when they coined the eighth Hermetic principle, the principle of care, as the generative principle. This principle explains why we give our attention to things that we care about, things we consider valuable. This willful observation is what makes them real and present, first in our imagination, and over time in our actions, and eventually in the fruit of those actions as material results. Likewise, the generative principle creates the physical world through a conscious focus on the object of value. This is the sacred thread that modern humans lost. It's not a discovery of new insights. It's us being confronted by our own willful ignorance. Modern spirituality has also lost this thread for multiple reasons. The first reason is our codependent fixation on the philosophy of empiricism, which we call empirical science. Empiricism begins with a hypothesis and then tests its validity through experiments that rely on linking causes to effects. It's a powerful tool for exploring the material world, but its strength is also its blind spot. It ignores the fact that even the principle of cause and effect emerges from a deeper pattern, one that gives rise to the very laws it seeks to measure. That deeper reality is, by its nature, not subject to the law of cause and effect, but rather gives birth to it the same way a chicken gives birth to an egg. Our codependent relationship with empiricism has locked us inside an ironic chicken and egg paradox, where the philosophy that governs our analysis is also an obstacle to deepening our understanding. The so-called modern scientific method has gotten us a long way and was necessary for a time, but it has now become the primary obstacle to penetrating the next layer of understanding about our reality. We have philosophically amputated our capacity to penetrate the veil between knowledge and mystery. We've trapped ourselves in a funhouse of self-deception, where we use the physical tools shaped by non-physical laws to deny the existence of those laws. This has happened many times in history, dating back to the now outdated philosophical models of the Greek philosophers. The fact that we're still clinging to the scientific method as the gold standard for discovering truth proves that, as a species, we are no different than our ancestors. In our quest to ascend the mountain of truth and to reach the top, we have mistaken a campsite on the side of the mountain with the summit. This is a fact that modern materialist scientists are being forced to come to grips with. Their attempts to dodge and to explain away this truth have given rise to unnecessarily complex theories that create more questions than answers. These theories are born not from honest and rigorous questioning and experimentation, but from a desperate attempt to explain away things that atheistic scientists are philosophically allergic to. They will die in their ignorance, leaving the next generation to step forward in courage and clarity out of the philosophical prison of modern empiricism. As Max Planck said in 1948, "A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it." Science will not advance by the humble grace of Carl Sagan's brilliant metaphor about the marriage between wonder and skepticism. It will continue to advance one funeral at a time, just as it always has. Those who accept this will pursue truth as Sagan hoped, and earn a deeper understanding of themselves and the universe. Those who refuse will continue to invent clunky, assumption-ridden theories that are conjured, not to deepen their understanding of reality, but to circumvent a conclusion they are ideologically allergic to. Meanwhile, our ancestors were wise and humble enough to accept that information precedes and shapes physical manifestation. When we criticize or object to their conclusions, we are merely objecting to the mythical or metaphorical language through which they decided to express it. This is a profound expression of our arrogance and our ignorance. Truth is truth regardless of where it comes from or what language we use to communicate it. In this respect, our ancestors were much humbler and wiser than we are today. On top of this, even the people who accept the reality of a world beyond this one have locked themselves into one of the boxes for consciousness that we call religion. I'm not just talking about orthodox religions. The New Age movement has its own dogma that in many ways is more self-deceptive than the dogma that dominates traditional religious institutions. The New Age movement bypasses the quest for deeper understanding by cloaking spiritual speech in sweeping abstractions and catchphrases that, upon deeper examination, make a person feel and sound more spiritual, while permitting them to understand and believe in nothing. Breaking out of these boxes for consciousness starts with understanding that there is no separation between the spiritual realm and the material realm. What we speak of as being above is equally present below. It's just expressed at a different level of consciousness, much as the shadow self is on the same spectrum as our higher self. Jesus demonstrated this understanding when he taught the Lord's Prayer, saying, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." The ancient alchemists spoke of this as the law of correspondence, saying, "As above, so below." But even these sayings have been reduced to mere spiritual platitudes. The same has happened with our utterances about the spiritual principles across all traditions. The root cause of this is our attempt to separate the so-called supernatural world from the world of the here and now. Spiritual freedom starts with adopting a sharper and deeper language for understanding how the universal, infinite living mind expresses itself through us. This is where modern science and ancient spirituality can be beautifully combined into a new, more practical perspective on what it means to be both human and divine. But reclaiming the sacred doesn't stop with our philosophy of spirit. It must extend to how we perceive the self. For this to happen, a second paradigm must also be dismantled. The second paradigm treats human beings as machines or meat suits. This paradigm is a fossil of the industrial age, a time when human beings went from living in harmony with nature to working with machines, harmonizing with clock time, and trading the previous hours of their lives for set dollar amounts. The human mind and body became tools or productivity cogs in the economic machine. You were labeled as either productive or broken, useful or replaceable. Over time, we began to view the body not as sacred, but as mechanical. In this paradigm, you are hardware. Your brain, your organs, your skin, everything is treated as a mechanical asset or a liability. Your emotions are glitches, your thoughts and imaginations, distractions. Fatigue or burnout is a system malfunction Pain in the body is a noise to be silenced. This is the machine-driven paradigm that gave rise to modern medicine, modern education, and modern work culture. Even the popular personal growth paradigm teaches us to optimize ourselves like software, that is, reprogram your mind, fix your old programming, upgrade your life, or fuel your machine. These cliches teach us to self-medicate against the signals coming from our body. They train us to override or overstimulate our senses so we can feel alive, even if only for a moment. This forces us to numb the pain that screams of our disconnection from the universal, infinite, living mind of which we are an expression. Machines don't cry when they hear a song that reminds them of love. Machines don't tremble beneath the stars. Machines don't crave justice. Machines don't feel the presence of God in the wind or the waves. You do and feel all of these because you are not a piece of machinery or a hunk of meat. You are an instrument designed not for efficiency, but for authentic expression. And when your instrument falls out of tune, it doesn't just underperform, it aches, it fragments, it forgets its music, it breaks, just like a violin left in the sun warps, just like a drum played too hard splits its skin. And if you try to push through that pain like a factory worker trying to meet a quota, you don't just damage yourself, you lose the ability to hear the music of your own soul. This is why grind culture and positive thinking and hustle mentality are so spiritually devastating. They treat your sacred instrument like an assembly line robot. They turn breath into fuel, not prayer. They turn rest into laziness. They turn pain into weakness. They hijack the body's divine intelligence and override it with factory logic. But your body is not a cog in the system. It's an instrument of the divine. Your bones are an expression of sacred geometry. Your breath is a living metronome. Your nervous system is a symphony of ancient signals, whispering, warning, praising, grieving, celebrating. The rhythms of your organs echo cosmic patterns. Your brain is not a computer, it's an interpreter of divine frequencies. Modern science tries to reverse engineer this sacred system with metaphors borrowed from machines. But the soul is not software, and the brain is not a motherboard. Real healing starts the moment you remember. You are not here just to be productive. You are here to be whole and to live with purpose. Wholeness means being, not just doing, listening to the body, not medicating it, honoring pain as a signal, not an error. Most importantly, give the shadow self space to show up in the world and to mature into your higher self. Your sacred instrument is not a factory, it's a temple. Its tuning is not measured by speed or output, but by coherence, by the degree to which every layer of your being aligns with the universal, infinite, living mind of which you are a unique expression. This is why your nervous system matters. This is why your breath matters. This is why your posture, your voice, your rhythm, your rituals matter. These things are not decorative, they are functional. They are how the divine plays music through you. You are not hardware. You are not a meat suit. You are a sacred instrument in the hands of a living composer. And that's the goal of the shadow work method in this chapter. Not to rewire the machine, but to retune the instrument. Not to push harder, but to play more faithfully. Not to fix the body, but to remember what it's here for. New subheader, The Mystery of Godliness. The ancient wisdom teachings tell us that our mind-body is an expression of the sacred masculine and feminine powers embodied in one vessel. Your nervous system is a sacred instrument that uses these two powers to create your unique energetic signature, your authentic voice. Your sympathetic and parasympathetic systems represent masculine and feminine channels of your embodied soul. The sympathetic system is your fire. It activates, defends, focuses, pursues. It's the forward thrust, the clarifying edge, the sharp note that cuts through silence. This is your divine masculine, penetrating, directive, protective. The parasympathetic system is your water. It softens, receives, processes, restores. It's the swell beneath the melody, the open resonance that allows emotion to echo and settle. This is your divine feminine, intuitive, receptive, regenerative. When both are tuned and balanced, your life becomes coherent. But when one dominates, or worse, shuts down, you don't just feel off. You become dissonant. You get stuck in chronic stress, overactive masculine, or apathy and shutdown, collapse feminine. Your thoughts race, your emotions numb, your body rebels. This isn't just a nervous system imbalance. It's an energetic fracture, and it throws your entire being out of harmony, not just with yourself, but with others, with your purpose, and with the field of consciousness you're here to express. Coherence is the foundational state of personal power. It aligns your nervous system, clarifies your perception, and allows your full presence to emerge without contradiction or distortion. To master your sacred instrument, you must learn to tune both strings, to activate when it's time to build and soften when it's time to listen, to speak truth with clarity and hold space with compassion. The goal isn't dominance, it's orchestration, and the result of that orchestration is coherence. Your brain isn't divided by accident. The separation of the hemispheres is not a flaw in design. It's a deliberate architecture of wholeness. Your left hemisphere is the domain of distinction, structure, sequence, and analysis. It divides the world into names, categories, and paths. It is the house of language, the voice of identity, the architect of pattern. Without it, you couldn't navigate the material world. You couldn't build, protect, discern, or direct. Your right hemisphere is the domain of union, field, presence, and flow. It does not divide. It connects. It feels reality as a living whole before the mind dissects it into parts. It is the birthplace of intuition, imagination, somatic awareness, and spontaneous knowing. Without it, you couldn't experience beauty, awe, empathy, or the presence of integrated awareness. The problem isn't that we have two brains. The problem is that modern society crowned the left brain the singular ruler of your mind-body complex, and the result has been a tyranny of a thinking style we mistakenly call reason. Sound thinking only comes when your masculine, rational, and feminine experiential energies move in sacred rhythm. You don't just find balance, you activate the architecture of divine design by tuning your mind-body instrument. From childhood, you were trained to worship logic, speed, performance, and metrics. You were rewarded for analysis and punished for intuition. You were taught to master facts but ignore feeling. You learned to dissect life into pieces rather than experience it as presence. You were taught to control life instead of dance with it. This lopsided development fractures the human instrument at its core. When the left hemisphere dominates without integration from the right, thinking becomes detached from being. Action becomes severed from embodiment. Connection becomes performative, a set of mental frameworks rather than a living flame. When the right hemisphere is repressed, life becomes brittle. Faith becomes superstition. Freedom becomes indulgence. Passion becomes burnout. Creativity collapses under the weight of metrics. Relationships lose the pulse of empathy and spiral into performance, transaction, and mistrust. But when these two forces are brought into sacred polarity, they produce something miraculous. The left brain authors the structure, the right brain sings the soul into it. The left brain defines the sacred space. The right brain fills it with living fire. The left brain tracks the path. The right brain dances with the presence. This sacred harmony transcends the biology through which it expresses itself. It mirrors the original divine design of humanity. In Genesis we are told, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." Genesis 1:27. Humanity was not created first as separate genders, but as a whole being, carrying both masculine and feminine energies in sacred union. It was only later that God separated Adam into male and female forms, a division of embodiment, not of essence. The Old Testament book of Malachi, chapter 2, verse 15 says, "Did he not make them one with a portion of the Spirit in their union? And what was the one God seeking? Godly offspring, so guard yourselves in your spirit." And this is why the Apostle Paul, writing in 1 Timothy 3:16, referred to the mystery of godliness not as dogma, but as a divine rhythm. Beyond all question, the mystery of godliness is great. He, Jesus Christ, was manifested in the flesh, vindicated by the Spirit, seen by angels, preached among the nations, believed on in the world, taken up in glory. Each line reveals a flow between the material and the transcendent, between structure and field, between masculine embodiment and feminine elevation. This is not a theological outline, it is a metaphysical choreography. And it is the very choreography that coherence mirrors within you. This is what I call the Phoenix Awakening, a modern term for an ancient pattern of inner convergence. While ancient traditions express this synthesis in symbols of death and rebirth, the phrase itself is a modern articulation of the full synergy of polarities within a single vessel. This is the deeper meaning of brain and heart coherence, long before EEGs or biometric trackers existed. True coherence isn't about suppressing one side in favor of the other. It's letting the masculine mind and the feminine mind, the head and the heart, bow to one another in sacred rhythm. Only then can the logos, the living information of the divine mind, flow through you cleanly. Only then can your life stop being a collection of reactions and become what it was always meant to be, a living, breathing, sacred song. This is godliness, not perfection, not piety, not performance, not ideology, but the harmonizing of the masculine and feminine into one embodied flame, not dominance, but rhythm, not silencing, but listening. True mastery isn't when one side takes control. It's when both move together with mutual respect, like two dancers sharing the same music. This is what the ancient wisdom pointed to with phrases like, "The two shall become one flesh," Genesis 2:24, and again in the book of Malachi 2:15. "And did not he make one? Yet had he the residue of the Spirit. And wherefore one? That he might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth." These verses weren't just about physical marriage. They were about the inner marriage, the sacred reconciliation of opposites within the self. The godly seed is not merely biological lineage. It is the fruit of inner union. It is the life that emerges when we cease betraying the unloved parts of ourselves, when we take heed to our own spirit, when we remember that creation begins within. It is the reunion of the parts we once exiled, the remembering of the shadow not as enemy, but as the part of us that once protected our light in the only way it knew how. It is the step beyond survival, beyond emotional reactivity, into the state of spiritual sovereignty, where power is no longer taken or proven, but embodied. It is the end of conformity, not in rebellion, but in the quiet revolution of becoming fully yourself. This is where real power comes from, not from image, status, or mastery of performance, but from union within, from letting the heart and the intellect bow to one another, from letting the shadow speak, not to wound, but to awaken. Your masculine logic doesn't silence your feminine presence. Your feminine intuition doesn't drown your masculine direction. Together they create a mind that can build cathedrals and birth miracles. This living union is not a new identity. It is your original design. It is the path back to wholeness. It is the shape of inner freedom. And at the center of it, beneath the noise, beyond the masks, and behind every wound you've ever carried, is what you came here looking for, inner peace. Not the kind you force, not the kind you fake, but the kind that emerges when nothing in you is at war with itself. This is the music your sacred instrument was always meant to play. This is the authentic path to healing, inner peace, and prosperity.
End of Chapter 4, Part 1 of Awaken Your Shadow by Seth Cherupak.